Welcome to another episode of Speaking with the Senator. I'm Senator Kevin Avard, and I represent Nashua, Hollis, Brookline, Mason, Rindge, New Ipswich, Greenville, and people that just want to come on the show. And today we have an interesting show about a topic that is affecting New Hampshire quite a bit. And in the future, almost half of our population will be close to 60 to 70 years old in New Hampshire. And one of the things that we're realizing is that there's a situation with individuals, maybe 20%, 30%, I'm not sure what that real number is, we'll get to that, may be suffering from some form of either early dementia or Alzheimer's full-blown. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about that with Melissa. And Melissa, how do I pronounce your last name?
Grenier.
Of course.
Yeah, it's fine.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, just yesterday we were in the subcommittee and we were talking with the Department of Safety or AG's office. Yep. And we were talking a little bit about elder abuse and how that, there are individuals that take care of people that are at early stage Alzheimer's or whatnot, or full blown. And one of the things that blows your mind is that they're getting ripped off. And the numbers were staggering. Sure. And so, we're trying to bring awareness to individuals out there that, we're concerned. We want people to be prepared. But the reason I brought you on is because, and we've had you on the show before, again, just to help individuals become a little bit more aware about Alzheimer's. And, I don't know if my mom or my dad has it, but something has changed. And I don't know who to talk to. What do they do?
Well, certainly they can use the Alzheimer's Association as a resource. Mm-hmm. We have an office in Bedford, but we serve the entire state of New Hampshire. If they have family members outside of New Hampshire, but they happen to live in New Hampshire, they're welcome to call us in New Hampshire, or they can call their local chapter in another state. But our toll-free 1-800 number is going to be the best bet for them, mm-hmm. because they can call us no matter what day of the week it is, if it's nights, holidays. And that's going to be kind of what I call the gateway to the mothership. We can help them with their needs, whether they be small or big. If they're dealing with an exploitation situation, if a daughter or a son needs a support group list, if they want to be an advocate and help support us and share their story with legislators or the community at large, then we can help connect them with the programs and services that we do, but also what's out and available in the Granite State.
So what's your background? How did you get involved with all this?
So I've been with the Alzheimer's Association for 13 years. I'm a licensed social worker. So I've been doing that as a whole for about 20 years. And I had all of my grandparents alive when I started college, and I just had wonderful relationships with them. And so as part of my education, I did some internships with older adults, happened to be older adults with memory impairment, but I just ended up loving it. And so as I started my career after I graduated from college, I started getting involved with different positions. One of them being, so speaking of exploitation, one of them was working in elder guardianship in Massachusetts for 3.5 years before I landed at the Alzheimer's Association. So that gave me a wonderful background in all of the different adult protective services, making decisions as a guardian on behalf and of wards, and representing them in court, and all manner of things. And so a lot of times we would get involved as a guardian because there was exploitation or financial abuse or neglect or abuse of other kinds towards people with memory impairment, oftentimes from family members or people that are close to them.
Yeah, and we had in our committee, we had an individual that works with the credit unions, and they're really well versed on asking questions. So, where's this going? Or, how, what are you doing with this? And if somebody looks nervous, they're reported. It's amazing how, there are safety nets, but there are also gaps I guess what we learned that there was like 1 out of every 10 they get, which is staggering. Or that number.
The number of people who get Alzheimer's disease?
No, the one who get caught for abusing.
Oh, for abusing them.
And that's tragic. And Now, one of the other reasons I wanted you to come on the show, are there any events that are going on that that bring awareness or draw support for this?
Yeah, the largest fundraising event that the Alzheimer's Association does across the country is called our Walk to End Alzheimer's. We're really excited because this year we're going to be having it for the second time at the Merrimack Outlets.
Oh, wow.
In Merrimack. So last year we had switched it from Manchester down to Merrimack, and we're going to have it there again. That walk is going to be on October 19th, Saturday, October 19th. And there's no cost to register, but we do encourage people to register. They can fundraise and have their own team. They can bring family and friends. There's over 1,000 people that come, and there's a lot of peer support. There's a lot of camaraderie, and I think it's really important that we give folks, whether people living with the disease or family members, an opportunity to be around one another and to know that they're not alone in in what they're going through. So, but we do have other walks. So if any of your viewers are from different parts of the state or will be in different parts of the state in October, then we also have a walk on October 6th in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And then we have one on October 5th in Keene.
Wow, a lot of walking.
A lot of walking.
Yeah, that's true. And I think one of the benefits to that as well is if you're an individual who wants to learn a little bit more about that, you'll be surrounded with a bunch of people that you can just indiscreetly, if you will, or discreetly, not indiscreetly, discreetly go up to somebody and start a conversation.
Sure.
Because one of the things I think people really struggle with is if they feel either they have a situation with themselves, they're afraid to ask their doctor about it, or they're afraid to ask about one of their parents or a relative, how to gingerly go about it. And being around that amount of people, you can see that, like you said, you're not alone, but there are support systems. What do you think are some of the first signs that somebody should, obviously you want to make the phone call, but you've been in this for a while.
Yeah.
So, what's a first thing that people should start paying attention to?
Yeah. So the first thing, before I get to maybe a couple of specific examples, is that when a person should be more concerned when some of what we would consider normal age-related changes start to tip the balance and start to impact a person's independence. So a super quick definition of dementia is cognitive decline significant enough to impact day-to-day functioning. So that can look like having trouble completing familiar tasks. So a lot of times we'll hear from people whose parent loved to cook, and now they're not able to use the stove safely anymore.
Ooh, okay.
Or drive a vehicle. That's another task that certainly...
Well, my wife could put me in that category. We just took a long trip to Philadelphia. And
she might blame that on you.
I got to be careful. But in all seriousness, that is an issue, though.
And I mean, it takes all of your cognitive faculties. It takes a lot of your mental and cognitive abilities to operate a motor vehicle. So that is certainly something that stands out, if a person is having a hard time. Although I will say that addressing the issue of driving or not driving anymore is one of the most difficult conversations that family members will have with their loved one.
It has to do with independence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A loss of independence. So we also see changes in a person's memory, particularly with Alzheimer's disease specifically, especially short-term memory. So an example of that would be what I had for breakfast. Whereas a long-term memory stays really well intact throughout the course of the disease. And a long-term memory might be, your childhood dog, the name of your childhood dog, or the street you grew up on, or your wedding song, things like that. So those stay intact, but those short-term memories, those recently learned things, those often kind of fall by the wayside, and a person with Alzheimer's disease isn't able to kind of pull on them and get them out.
Okay, get a little nervous because there's sometimes I walk into the room and I wonder if I come in,
Well, I do that, so.
What did you say your name was? Or
Right.
I knew I was going to tell you something, but there's a lot of things on my mind as well.
Well,
so.
I was just going to say, we lead very busy lives. We have we're go. And so I think, our brains are only capable of holding so much information at the same time. But chances are, you walk into the room, forget for a split second why you went there, and then you're like, oh yeah, I needed to grab those papers to go bring them to work or something like that. Or you remember the person's name a couple minutes later. They might have been gone by then, but you remember. Yeah. So we also see changes in communication. So it becomes harder and harder for a person with Alzheimer's disease to understand what someone else is saying to them, but also for them to communicate what they need.
Interesting. Yeah. The other day I was putting something away, and my wife says, "Honey, come here." So what's the matter? What's the matter? I'm busy. I was practicing my guitar, and she said, "Come here. I want you to look into the trash." I opened it up, and there were my keys. I was like, "Oh no! How did that happen?"
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily a sign, right?
No, I think we all make mistakes like that.
Yeah.
I forget the most important ingredient I needed for a recipe when I go to the grocery store, and then I kick myself and I have to go back to the grocery store because I forgot it. But that doesn't mean I can't be independent and function, on a day-to-day basis, right? Again, I would get concerned if you were constantly throwing things away that were important, your wallet, your glasses, your cell phone, things like that. Or if your wife was finding them in funny places, like, your phone was in the freezer, when she went to get the frozen veggies out for dinner or something like that. Losing things and, not being able to retrace someone's steps and find them, that's another warning sign.
So I'm sure you've heard a lot of horror stories and seen a lot of horror stories. If somebody waits too long, you can end up really in a pickle, I guess. I think we had somebody here on not too long ago, and she lost her husband, but she felt like she was all alone. And that doesn't have to be that way, does it?
No, and that's what personally kind of breaks my heart is when people say, I wish I had known about you sooner, meaning the Alzheimer's Association or some other programs and resources and things like that, because although we don't yet have a cure for Alzheimer's disease, there are things that we can help people with to help provide them with the best quality of life for as long as possible. We can help them plan for the future and make choices that will enable them to have the best quality of life. There are treatments now, different treatments, new treatments for people that are living in the early stage of the disease. Mm-hmm. But when people wait until the middle or towards the end of the disease process, biologically, there's very little, the medications that are out there are not going to be particularly effective. And by that point, a person may not have gotten their advanced directives in order yet because, we don't necessarily as humans want to face.
What is that?
Want to face death
and
make, advanced directives would be things like, a living will and a healthcare proxy.
Oh, yeah.
And so preparing for the time.
Trusts and things like that,
preparing for a time when, if I had Alzheimer's, preparing for a time when I wouldn't be able to make my own choices. And sort of enlisting representatives to do, to handle my finances, to handle my medical decisions. So a lot of times, and I've seen this, that's why guardianship ended up being needed when I was working in that field, because people, even well-meaning families who didn't have any abuse or exploitation involved, some of them just never put those things in place. And so their loved one just continued to progress in the disease process. And then they got to a point where they couldn't make their own decisions, but there weren't any documents in place to.
So what happens in a situation? The courts step in, or?
Yeah, guardianship is an option. We try to avoid obtaining guardianship, not because it's not helpful, but it's time consuming and it's expensive and it's very stressful.
Right.
And so it's not difficult. It can be a little stressful to think about putting these plans in place, but it's going to save people a lot, a huge headache and a half later on down the road when their loved one can't make their own decisions. There'll be documents in place.
When should people start planning on this?
I mean, I'm not an elder law attorney or a financial advisor, but I believe if you're over 18, you should probably have some documentation.
Because you can get that early onset, can't you?
I mean, you can, not at 18, but I mean, actually, young onset Alzheimer's does occur. It occurs when someone's under the age of 65. We do see, folks in their 40s and 50s in New Hampshire. Not a ton of them, but we do see them. And so I definitely.
And that'll catch you by surprise. That's a huge T-bone.
Oh, sure.
Right,
and it's hard to diagnose because what doctor, what person wants to, go and address significant issues that they're having, doctors they're better, but they're not particularly savvy at
early onset.
Yeah, exactly. At finding, diagnosing someone accurately with young onset Alzheimer's disease.
Oh, so do you have any projections of how the increases will be in the next few years? I mean, I've seen some, but I couldn't accurately quote them.
Yeah. So right now in New Hampshire, we have 26,000 people living with Alzheimer's disease that are over the age of 65. So that doesn't account for anybody under 65 who has Alzheimer's. It also does not account for folks with any other type of dementia. I mean, Alzheimer's disease is the number one most common type of.
There's more types.
There's more types.
What kind?
Yeah. So we all know what a stroke is. I'm sure many of your viewers know what a stroke is. So there is a vascular dementia, which is a type of dementia caused from a lack of enough oxygen getting to the brain. And so brain cells die because of the lack of oxygen. So that's a different type of dementia than Alzheimer's. But also it's another pretty common one. A lot of people have vascular problems. So Parkinson's disease actually has Parkinsonian dementia associated with it. With Parkinson's disease, we often think about the motor issues and the tremors and things like that. But later on in the disease process, a person can have dementia associated with that disease unto itself.
I think I've seen a commercial on that where, especially if there's certain medications that they're on, that they're actually talking to somebody that's not there. Which
sure.
That kind of blows your mind. Like, wow. I can imagine that be extremely debilitating, especially if it's ongoing. But you never think about this stuff.
Yeah, it's scary, and I think working in the field, for so long, I think I really try to put myself in the position of a particular person or a particular family member who's dealing with this journey, and trying to imagine what it would be like to not be able to tie my shoes anymore, or sign a check, or drive my vehicle, or make a meal, or things like that. And people do sort of lose orientation with where they are, how they got there. With when you were talking about sometimes people are talking to someone who's not there, people do have hallucinations and delusions. For instance, sometimes someone with Alzheimer's disease will walk by a mirror and think it's someone completely different. They don't realize it's themselves anymore. So there's a lot of changes that happen, and I think I don't want people to be alarmed by them. And so if they call the Alzheimer's Association, then we can help them understand that probably everything they're experiencing, other people are experiencing as well, and that it's part of the disease process.
One of the things that we heard also yesterday in committee was there's a mandatory reporting of abuse.
Yes.
And it's just like any other field. If you know that there's a child being abused, there's mandatory abuse. Otherwise,
for adults,
if you fail to do so, you could be responsible for something. But I was thinking as we're talking, there are folks that are with family members, and then there are folks that they have nothing.
Yeah.
And I actually, ran into a few in my lifetime. I do cleaning. And, whether they were hoarders, but they also had a certain degree, and even though they had children, they never visited them.
Yeah.
And so they can be on the decline and nobody would know.
Yeah.
How does what safety nets do we have for them? Do we have any?
Well, it's really tough, frankly, as you're sort of talking about it, to sometimes find those folks. What sometimes will happen, what I often see is that, sort of a good Samaritan, like a neighbor, will be concerned and may call the local senior center or call the local, we'll call Service Link or we'll call Protective Services and just say, I'm really concerned. There's an odor coming from my neighbor's apartment, or, I've been seeing them going to check their mail and, they're, it looks like they're limping, or, anything. It could be anything.
Do a wellness check.
Do a wellness check, exactly. And then if there's a wellness check done, or if someone comes to just check on them, whether it's the police, local community police or Adult Protective Services, they can help start to get some services in place. So things like what I often will see is that Meals on Wheels.
Yeah, I've gone with them a few times, and sometimes they open up the door. Hello, hello.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful service.
Sometimes, yeah, it's a wonderful service, and sometimes those are the only people someone will see in a given day or a given week. So, living alone is, especially in today's day and age, we've learned so much about social isolation from COVID. And so we really want to discourage someone from, not necessarily living alone, but living without supports and contact with other people.
Right.
They
have a television show, and it's called Alone, and they put you out in the woods, and you'd be surprised how these rugged individuals they can live off the land, but that 15 days, 19 days, 20 days, they're breaking. You can see it, and they start dropping off because they need that human contact.
Yeah.
But there are individuals that are right in our own communities, without Meals on Wheels or things like that, they're isolated, and all they got is the TV if it's working, and it's really sad.
I mean, social isolation can happen in a full senior apartment building. I mean, we don't know our neighbors as well as we used to nowadays. And so, I could live in an apartment building, and both neighbors on either side could have some significant issues, and I may just never know. I
actually witnessed that. I've seen a couple of ladies sitting in the hall talking. They're all living on the same floor, and apparently they were talking about another neighbor that's been there for years. I don't know him. And they're talking about the person, but they don't know them.
Yeah.
And they're literally neighbors, like a closet door away.
Yeah.
Which is it's frightening. But simple advice for individuals that want to get more in touch. You talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but if we say it 3 times, then we remember it, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So how do people get in touch with the primary services to at least
at the Alzheimer's Association?
Yeah, to explore it anyway.
Yeah. So the best way to reach us is that toll-free 1-800 number, and that is 1-800-272-3900. And they can visit us online to learn more about our programs and services, which, by the way, everything is completely free. So there's no copays, there's no referrals. And the reason why we don't have to charge for anything is because of those events that I mentioned earlier, Walks to End Alzheimer's, The Longest Day, which is another signature event that we have in June for the summer solstice. It's the longest day of the year, and we honor people that are living with the disease and those who are caring for others, because it's a dawn to dusk job and then some, right? So if they call that toll-free number, that's going to be the best way to reach us, but they can also visit us online at www.alz.org/MANH for Massachusetts, New Hampshire. And they'll be able to find out more about the walk, other education programs and support groups that we have coming up. But yeah, I think the walk is a wonderful event, and all of our walks are. And so we just invite your viewers to come participate and check it out.
Kind of a little bit off topic.
Yeah.
Do you take interns?
We do take interns, and we're always looking for volunteers. So we have tons of openings for volunteers if someone wants to be a support group facilitator, if they want to help me do outreach and just let people know about our programs and services in the community, or they could even do it just in their faith community or in their backyard, kind of a thing, in their own neighborhood. And if they want to do education in the community, which I do a ton, then people are, we have opportunities for people to do that too. And certainly just to plug all the good work you do at the State House, they can also be an advocate and support the legislative efforts that we pursue.
Now, does your organization accept contributions from charitable gaming or anything like that?
Well, so we are in the process of applying for charitable gaming. So we haven't taken advantage of that yet, but we did hear about it, and so
How did you hear about that?
I know we have some very great friends.
Yes, I know that Gate City Casino, actually, they really support a lot of organizations, and I know that they're very concerned about this particular topic. So
Yeah.
I would, if I could invite you to reach out to them, they're very concerned about issues like this, and they want to be part of the community.
Yeah, charitable gaming, I think, is I didn't even know it existed until a year or two ago.
Yeah.
So I think that they're doing so much for nonprofits in New Hampshire, and we're hoping to be able to take advantage of that. So we do have an application in.
All right. Well, one more time with the 800 number, because we got actually 1 minute and 42 seconds left to go.
So I will say it all day long if I need to, but
That'll be the third time.
So it's our 24/7 helpline is 1-800-272-3900.
And I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you
having
very
me.
much. And if you're interested in about coming on the show, by all means, come on and talk about your nonprofit. And if you want to get involved, please volunteer. Call Melissa and let them know that you're concerned. You want to be engaged. Maybe do the walkathon. And listen. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the little like button and subscribe to the channel. I see people do that all the time. So now I'm asking you, if you don't mind, it helps us get our message out. And if you can share the video, that even helps even more. So until next week, thanks for watching Speaking with the Senator.